Yes, indeed. This is Andy B, the Get Your Home Show, only on Pure 24/7 Radio, and as is our norm, after 5 o'clock on a Monday through Wednesday, we have a guest of some sort on the station. Tuesdays, of course, is Dr. Richard Scott. Thursdays, and Lord Jackson chatting about Century Health, which leaves Mondays and Wednesdays for a whole plethora and smorgasbord of different people, which is always very exciting. Now, today, my guest is up in Scotland, working in a prison as a chaplain. Hello, how are you doing?
Good, Andy. Yeah, very good. Thanks. Yeah.
Now, let's just get a couple of things out of the way. So you're working in prisons. This is something you're choosing to do. I just think it's worth just to clarify, you get to go home every day.
Yeah, they're glad to see the back of my by the end of the day, usually.
So, I mean, prison chaplaincy, I guess for some folk, that means, well, it's all about religious stuff. For some other people, it might mean more pastoral care. What's a kind of, I know there's no such thing as a typical day, but what's a typical day for you working in a prison as a chaplain? What might you be doing?
Well, over the course of a week, sort of do 5 or 6 services over the course of the week for the different populations within the prison. Get a lot of referrals, one-to-ones with guys, and like you rightly said at the beginning, there's spiritual care, which kind of is for people with faith, and the majority of what we do is pastoral care. A lot of listening, bereavement work. Kind of a lot of the guys like to light a candle if somebody and their family has passed, perhaps because they're in custody, they're not welcome to come to the funeral service. So we would have a little service sort of in the multi-faith with them, almost parallel, the same time as the funeral, and virtual funerals as well. Since COVID, that sort of took off. So that's one thing, one good thing that we've taken out of COVID, I suppose. We do, like every hall has a referral diary. So we check that daily. If anybody wants to see a chaplain, have a chat with the chaplain, we take referrals like that. But for me, like I enjoy being on the hall in the residential area, chatting with the guys, mixing, just getting to know them a bit. Laugh with some guys, allow guys to cry a bit. The verse in Hebrews, is it? Rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. That's the sort of ministry that we're in. But no, I mean, you rightly said there's no average day in the life of a prison chaplain. We're there for staff as well. Quite an intense environment. The prisons are all overcrowded just now, so there's a lot of pressure on staff as well. So I think my door's always open. Staff will pop in for a coffee and a chat. And, I absolutely love what I do. I always say it's my dream job. It's not like a job, really.
Now, I know that obviously this is audio, the video will go out later, but if you watch the video later when it goes out onto YouTube in a week or two, you will see the joy on your face as you're talking, which I think is translating through the voice as well, because when I was chatting with a prison GP, Dr. Rachel Pickering, who other end of the country from you, but she was talking about how she just knows that she's meant to be there when she did her first session in a police prison cell, when she went in to see what was going on as a police surgeon at the time. She was a bit shocked by some of the stuff, but also felt this massive, overwhelming sense of peace of, yeah, but I know that crazy stuff's going on, but I know I'm supposed to be here, which I would imagine, therefore, is something that you're also feeling.
Absolutely. It's the call of God on my life. And I look back on my life in every season, in every chapter that I've been in throughout, well, I'm 47, I'm 48 this year. And I just look, every season has prepared me for the next season and for the next season. And that's what God does. I started off as a volunteer for prison fellowship within the prison, then picked up some hours. I was part-time for a long time, then went to a different prison down in Glasgow, and then ended up going back to the prison that I was in part-time as a full-time chaplain. But God always prepares us for the next season, doesn't he? He's always doing something.
I've had a few friends I've met over the years who were chaplains in the armed forces. One particular guy that really comes to mind, he was a chaplain in the RAF. And when I was chatting with his wife one day, it's like, what's it like being a chaplain? Because he'd gone away on deployment. And she said, the thing is, the reason why it's so important to have somebody who's a chaplain of a really high rank is they can talk to every single rank. And it's
Yeah.
really important because if one of the guys who's sort of the lower level of the pyramid, I guess, of ranks, if he's struggling with something, then he sometimes feels he's got no one to talk to, but he can talk to the chaplain. And the thing about the chaplain, they can sort of almost walk past all the different ranks to go right to where they've got to get to and have a conversation that actually needs to happen. Is that sort of similar for what you're finding as well? Or is that more specific to armed forces?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of the people on a higher rank are under a wee bit more pressure. Like they're the people that make it all happen and make sure that everything's running smooth and the buck almost stops with them. And yeah, it's a bit cliche, but who helps the helper when the helper needs help?
Yeah.
And like for me as a chaplain, I always say that relationship is currency.
Mm.
And I work hard as a prison chaplain to build those relationships right across the board, and having an open door just to let people offload, to rant a wee bit, to listen, take the opportunity to pray with them. But yeah, I available to absolutely everybody and have great relationships with all the staff really. Um, yeah, it's fantastic.
You said that when you began, you started as a volunteer, so obviously you're giving your time, you're going in, and then you moved to a more fixed job. But how did
Yeah.
you first find yourself thinking, "Hey, do you know what? Let's go into prison as a volunteer chaplain"? Where did that first opportunity first arise for you?
Well, when I first became a Christian, I became a Christian January the 28th, 2005. And like not long into my journey, I just felt burdened for prisons. I've never been to prison, which is a miracle in itself. But just sort of had a heart for those in prison and prayed for them every morning and then volunteered, applied to volunteer with Prison Fellowship, um, 2012 maybe. And it was the old Aberdeen jail, Craig Inches and Peter Heath prison at the time. Volunteered in there for maybe a year and a half. And then the new jail opened. So Aberdeen closed and the old Peterhead closed. And there was a bigger jail, HMP Grampian, was built in Peterhead. I think that opened in the April. And I was offered a temporary contract in the May. That started off as 6 hours a week. I was running an outreach cafe full time at the same time. Used to go in and sort of do Bible studies with the guys and different things. And I just sort of grew from there. I got more hours and then got kind of my own contract. I was on a temporary contract anymore. And it just sort of grew. August 2019, the the prison that I was in Peterhead, the previous chaplain would be retiring in a few years. So the senior management said, listen, we would like you back as a full-time chaplain. It's important that you get some full-time experience. So then I went down to Barlinnie in Low Moss and worked a full-time position between those two prisons. Did that for 4 years and then came back to HMP Grampian full-time after that. So yeah, it's been some journey.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, 2005, you said you became a Christian. It's now 20. Got check my watch for the year. What is that? It's 2026. That's 21 years ago. You said you had this burden, but how did that kind of materialize into prisons? You said you had a burden and it sort of opened up, but did you speak to somebody? Did you apply for the job? How did you actually get
Yeah,
into
so
prison?
I found out about Prison Fellowship. The Prison Fellowship is an organisation, a charity that goes into prisons as volunteers, kind of support some of the church services, run Bible studies, sort of little services through the week and different things. So I started off volunteering with them, and that's where it all began. Bit of a baptism of fire, really. The first time that I went in to the prison, I was interested in volunteering, and Barry Woodward was up, and he was out doing Craig Inches in Aberdeen and Peterhead. So kind of he asked me if I wanted to come in and share my story a bit. And that was the first time I went in. And one of the prisoners came in on the first day in Peterhead, and he said, "Are you speaking today?" And I said, aye, I'm sharing my story. And he said, well, it better not be a load of nonsense. He may have used another word in place of nonsense. Um, and I said, well, I hope no as well. And then the fear and the reality, I just thought, oh man, here we go. But I know it went very well, and I was always very thankful to Barry for that opportunity. Um, Absolutely incredible. To
I,
think that was kind of maybe 13, 14 years ago, and now I'm a full-time chaplain. Blows my mind.
which is awesome. One of the first things I think that most people are going to think: prison doors, cells, clanging sounds. How did you find with that? Because I don't know how I'd cope with that. I've never had to enter that environment. I don't know. I don't think I would be that relaxed with doors closing. I'm not claustrophobic. I think I could suddenly become so. But how was that? Or is it just because you knew where you were going to be called to go? So it just it's not relevant.
I mean, I wouldn't say there's ever been a situation for me as a prison chaplain where I've thought, oh dear, this is not good.
Hmm.
The guys, the prisoners, the men and women in our care, they're brand new. They're very, very good with me. I don't wear a white shirt, so I'm no threat to them. I'm not there sort of to discipline them or argue with them or say no or whatever it might be. You're very much seen as a helper, as somebody that is there for them, to listen to them, to encourage them. Um, but no, I mean, I guess it's the call of God. People often ask, "You ever get scared going into the prison?" No, I'd say I'm more scared in community. I know who the men and women are in prison. I know what they've done, and I know my relationship with them. In community, you don't know who's walking about.
It's an interesting perspective, I think, that most people may not consider.
Yeah,
What we think of as dangerous maybe actually isn't. It's perspective really does change
yeah,
the reality of our situation, doesn't it?
absolutely. I mean, when I went for the interview, I think I tell a story quite a bit, but when I went for the interview down in Glasgow, it was Low Moss I was being managed by, although I was in both jails. And the interview panel, the guy who would be my boss, should I get the job, he asked me, what, in your opinion, what does chaplaincy offer within a prison environment that no other kind of department would offer? And I replied, well, a judgment-free approach to the prisoner body. And he nodded his head and said, uh-huh. And I thought, oh, he wants a wee bit more. And I said, well, I believe there's good in absolutely everybody. I said, for some, you'll find it with a rake, and for others, you might need a JCB digger. But if you dig deep enough, you'll find good in everybody. And he nodded again. And there's no word of a lie. I said, well, think about Pinocchio. I said, Pinocchio, his mum and dad couldn't have children, so Geppetto, his dad, decides to build his own boy. He's a carpenter. So he builds the perfect boy. I was saying, and for us, if we have kids, we take what we get. But Geppetto was able to build his boy. Pinocchio grows up. He's on his way to school. He's throwing his apple in the air. I'm a good boy. I said, and everything's fine. But eventually, uh, honest, what's his name again? Honest John comes on the scene and he's saying, come to Pleasure Island. It's great. Come to Pleasure Island. Jiminy Cricket's on his shoulder and he's saying, don't go. It's bad. It's bad. But eventually, curiosity gets the better of Pinocchio and he's sitting on a little three-legged wooden stool with a cigar, looking like he's got life cracked. And I said, but eventually the wheels fell off for Pinocchio and he would have done anything to be back with Geppetto. But it was too late. And then I said to the interview panel, I said, what do you think? Do you think that Pinocchio was a bad boy? Or do you think he was a good boy that made bad choices? And that's what our prisons are full of. Good people that have made bad choices. And that is kind of how I see it. Somebody's had a really, really bad day. Something devastating has happened for the offender and the victim, if that's the case. But good people make bad choices. And that's kind of a great perspective, I think.
I was listening to an American guy who teaches about it's kind of about self-worth and stuff, but he was saying one of the things that we think of is, if someone burps, they're not a burper. We don't go, oh, that's a burper. They've had a burp.
Yeah.
But that doesn't define the entirety of it. I just think it's a brilliant example of how we need to be careful because, like you said, that doesn't define the entirety of them. It defined one tiny moment of them, and maybe it wasn't on purpose, but it's not their entire thing because there's all sorts of other elements of that person. But the one thing we might have heard is it's very rude in the middle of a lunchtime or something, but that's just one moment, and there's a whole rest of a day and a week and a month and a year.
5 seconds, isn't it? A lot of the people and our prisons up and down the country, very, very intelligent, very talented, very gifted. Some of the artwork they do, I think the one guy that supported when I worked in Lower Moss, the potential that guy had was absolutely incredible. But 3 newspapers a day, and it wasn't the red tops, like the Daily Mail, deep stuff. The I don't read, do you know what I mean? But the way he soaked up information and the intelligence, that guy's halfway through a life sentence. I said to him one day about the potential that he had for obtaining information, and I said, I believe in you. He busted crying. He said, nobody's ever told me that. This guy was 45 years old. I tell my kids most days I believe in them. So, society, it's easy to write people off. It's easy to say, well, they're just bad. They're in prison because they're bad, because they've done something wrong. But again, good people make bad choices.
Which I think is really important. And sometimes you make bad choices, we get away with it. No one notices. I know we get a bit fast on that road that one time, and if we don't get caught by the police or the traffic camera, we get away with it. But maybe the other time we're a bit too quick, and as a police officer sat there waiting, and all of a sudden we're, losing our license, and all of a sudden we never got caught before. Now we've been caught, and I think often it's not like one. People don't generally do one crime and that's it. They've done the one crime one time and they get caught. That's not the normal. It's usually part of a pattern of a lifestyle. But of course they're going to get caught at some point, and it's too easy just to write people off. Oh, well, look at them. Like you said, these men, these women, they've made a mistake and they have to pay for it. Yes, of course they do. That's the law, but it's not the entirety of who they are. And I guess that's where you come into. I mean, you just said to one guy, I believe in you, and if you've never heard that, it's life transforming to think that there's another person out there who does believe in you. Yeah. If you've not heard that's no small thing.
Mm-hmm. And then a lot of people are told from a very young age, through the environment that they're brought up in and different things, you're no good, you'll never amount to nothing, do you know what I mean? And if you hear that enough, you believe it, you live it. Yeah.
You really do. I heard something about habits, forming a habit. If you do something 6 times, you repeat that thing 6 times, whatever it might be, you kind of form a habit. It only takes 6 occasions, basically. But if you want to break the habit, it's 6 weeks of continually not doing that same thing. And it was quite a stark reminder, I think, how easy it is to fall into something that's not great. 6 occasions, 6 repetitions. Now you've got a habit. And 6 weeks to undo that habit, and it's really, really hard if you do something enough times that it becomes normal. And like I said, if someone's always talking down, well, you're rubbish, you're useless, you can't do that. Yeah, well, enough of that, it just destroys. And especially if we're talking about children, where they're more vulnerable, less able to resist. Someone said something nasty to me not long ago. Don't really care. But if I was younger, that would have been different, because I wasn't able to sort of ignore that, because it probably would have.
You don't have a filter for it, and you take it all on, and
exactly,
it all becomes very real, and doubt creeps in, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah,
absolutely true. Let's move a bit into Christian faith then, because you were talking about being a chaplain. You've mentioned faith a few times. Where did faith become more for you? I mean, obviously you've said 2001 when you became a Christian, but 2005. But what was the journey up to being a Christian? Because you also said you're surprised you didn't go to prison. So, what's your story?
Yeah. So for me, I was a heroin addict for 10 years, sort of 1995 to 2005. Kind of found faith. Started going to church in 2004, probably the September, October 2004. Was going along to the church, kind of enjoyed it. So I went along to an outreach cafe for help for a start. And the guy there, Ben Litchie, invited me to church. And I busted laughing, saying, no, church isn't for me. churches for old people. And he said, no, I think you'd be surprised. I said, oh, no, no. He said, listen, if you come to church, I'll buy you a fish supper afterwards. So that was me. I was in. I was sold. So went along to church and it blew my mind. Like people were so nice, they were caring, they were interested, and that's how I was doing, and actually waiting for an answer. If we were going around the supermarket and we see people, we say, "Oh, how you doing? How you doing?" We don't wait for an answer. But these people in church cared and they loved me, cheered me on, believed the best of me. It was very obvious that I was in addiction. Um, and then 2004, December, the beginning of December 2004, had a massive overdose. One of my friends came home for the fishing, had loads of money, got a big square up, and we just went out and bought loads of drugs. And by 2 o'clock in the afternoon on the main street, Saturday afternoon, the main street in Fraserburgh, massive overdose, body totally collapsed. Woke up in Aberdeen Hospital, and it was two guys for the outreach cafe that were at the side, either side of the bed, and had a conversation. And Ben, he said, "Listen, you've been very fortunate this time. You're very, very lucky to still be alive." Prayed for me, and then said to my Paul, "Have you had enough?" And then they left, and as they left, I started to kind of think about it, and I thought, I really have had enough, and started to take account of everything that I had had enough of. I'd had enough of overdosing time and time again, had enough of hurting everybody that I loved and everybody that loved me, just the whole lifestyle. I really had enough. And that December in January, kept going along to the church, really enjoyed it, hadn't really made a commitment. And then January the 28th, 2005, I was in the outreach cafe with Ben, and he sat me down and said, "Do you believe that Jesus can change your life?" And I said, "Well, I do. Like loads of my friends who had used drugs and stuff, they had found faith, their lives had changed." And that night, we prayed together. I became a Christian. Went home, and Ben dropped me off, and he said, "You need to tell your mum and dad what you've just done." I said, "Well, you come in and you tell them." And he read my parable for the New Testament, for the Gospels, and I thought, like, okay, I'll go in. And I sat down in the living room. My dad's sitting in the classic dad seat in any house, nearest the fire, best view of the TV, and see out the front window. My mum, she was sitting knitting. I said, "I've got something to tell you. I've got news." And my dad, he's reading his newspaper. I've never flinched. My mum, she's knitting. My mum said, "Oh?" And I says, "I'm washed in the blood of Jesus." I said, "I've become a Christian." I said, my dad went and got his newspaper and lifted it back up. And I thought, well, that went well. Um, but that was the night that I became a Christian. And, I was still very much in addiction, but I knew something had changed and something was changing. I walked the streets of my hometown of Fraserburgh. A woman for the church bought my youth Bible, and I carried it everywhere with me. I used to go down for my methadone. I had my Bible. Used to go to drug dealers' houses to score, and I would put my Bible down, and people would say, "Well, what are you doing?" I'd say, "Jesus is going to set me free." And April the 19th, 2005, I went to Teen Challenge in Wales and got clean 21 years ago. It's mad. But the journey has just been incredible. It really, really is.
So you have an overdose. These guys, I mean, I guess it was someone who found you, took you to hospital. I like the question they ask, have you had enough?
Yeah.
Because you can't make someone go where they don't want to go. I suppose physically you can move them. That's
Yeah.
fine, yeah, fine. But really, if you want someone to change, they have to want to change. It's the basics of humanity.
It's massive and it's huge. If people, I always say to people, like a little wee bit of willingness goes a long, long way. Just a wee bit of willingness. Do you want to change? How much do you want to change? What are you willing to do? Will you take responsibility? And when people are ready to do that, the sky's the limit. You don't have to have all the answers. Ben Ritchie and took my hand and said, "Listen, I'll show you what you need to do. I'll show you where you need to go. And I listened to him because I knew that he was a genuine, sincere guy. I knew that he was a Christian. I knew that, I found him really inspirational. He was encouraging. He believed in me. And yeah, I knew that if I did what he advised me to do, change was highly possible. But a little wee bit of willingness. That's what it takes.
You end up in Wales Teen Challenge, which we've heard of a few times on the show. What was your withdrawal like? Because it seems to be quite different for a lot of people. I don't have any knowledge of that stuff. I just know it can be radically different. What was the process like for you coming off drugs to being actually clean?
Well, I had a detox. I think it was a 10-day detox. So I'd used heroin. I mean, I'd used drugs when I was 12, 13, softer drugs, party drugs, and kind of progressed on heroin. Um, so I'd used for 10 years, and then I was like, you're detoxing in 10 days. um, so I had a 10-day detox, which, I mean, I slept okay. It wasn't perfect, but as the medication started to reduce, the reduction program, um, probably took me about a month to get a full night's sleep and start to sort of feel a wee bit normal. I was coming off methadone, coming off heroin. I was using different tablets at the time. It was tough. It really was. But I was glad that I was down in Wales. It was an 18-hour bus journey away from home. So getting a bus home wasn't an option. I didn't have a passport. I didn't have photo ID. So flying wasn't an option. And I used to say, I'll stay one more day. Maybe tomorrow I'll be better. Maybe tomorrow I'll be better. And then eventually I was okay. And the staff there were fantastic. Had a counsellor that I met up with once a week. Prayed together, all the scriptures together. Um, and yeah, they cheered me on, believed in me, recognised the call of God in my life. So yeah, just sort of love back to life really. But the detox was tough. I'd love to sit here and say the angels appeared at the end of my bed and that was me. I was fine. But yeah, I think the pain's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because you don't forget how tough it was. You know what I mean? Like, and I remember somebody sent me like as I was detoxing, somebody that was further on in the program. That man, they said, "Paul, it's the high price for the low life." Thought, yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Can we go back a bit in time then? Because you talk about starting on softer drugs, then moving on to heroin. How did you find yourself on drugs? What was childhood family like? Was it sort of the norm where you were? Was it something I mean, how did you find yourself in that situation?
Family life was fantastic. Like we were brought up, mum and dad both worked very, very hard. With everything that we needed, me and my elder brother. At the age of 11 or 12, I sniffed petrol for the first time. And then maybe a year after that, smoked dope, smoked weed for the first time. And man, my mate's bedroom, like his brother, he was a big weed smoker and he kept a bag of weed in his inside suit jacket in the wardrobe. So he was away at the fishing. So I think we kind of helped ourselves and smoked weed for the first time. Quite enjoyed it. Then sort of the rave scene landed up here, maybe the early 90s. So took some party drugs and stuff, and then started taking downers. Went to my dealer one Friday. We were taking weed tablets called G-Zix. We used to snort them. And went to my dealer one Friday, and he said he didn't have tablets, but he had smack, which is heroin. And I hadn't really landed in the northeast corner at that time, and I bought it for the first time. Rang up one of my friends, and he showed me how to put it on tinfoil and chase the dragon, as it's called. So I did that sort of once a week. On a Friday, I kept going back for tablets. Oh, I don't have tablets, but what I do have. And then I started, so that was a Friday. And then I would use them the Saturday, then the Sunday, then the Thursday. And before I knew it, I was a full blown heroin addict. So it was progressive. And then, for me, it was curiosity. It was another drug.
Hmm.
Like I had just progressed from sort of sniffing petrol, smoking weed, speed, ease, that sort of stuff, onto downers, tablets, and then kind of just progressed other things. For us, when heroin landed in the town, it was just another drug that we knew nothing about. Little did we know the misery that it would cause in the community here. Fraserburgh's a small fishing town, so there was always plenty of money back then, and so when heroin landed, it just sort of ravaged the community really.
Fraser, obviously a fishing port. I understand a teeny bit of this because obviously the guys they go away for quite a long time. They got nowhere to spend money because they're on a ship. Then they come back. They got loads of money, and any young guy with lots of money, what am I going to spend
Yeah,
it?
hmm yeah, live like a king for the few days they're at home. No, absolutely. Yeah, mad.
Coming back to the prison work that you're doing now. So you're in the prison. Obviously, you're spending time with these guys. Where does faith come into it? Because I would imagine that you're speaking to anybody who wants to talk to you. But how do you work out where to bring faith in and where not to do that? How do you work that out?
I think you know, so that when you're having a conversation with somebody, you know if they're open to that sort of conversation. And I always say when I spend time with guys, if somebody puts in a referral or anything like that, if I spend time in conversation with a prisoner, I'll always say at the end of our time together, would you mind if I prayed for you? And it's not a great 10-minute long-winded prayer and hands down and eyes closed. Um, and I find that most people are open and they like that. And that kind of prompts further questions and different things. Um, but yeah, no, it's very interesting. I guess it's kind of the leading the spirit of God.
Which is always good.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's life for you then when you're not in prison? Because obviously it's a job that you do. But when you're coming out of prison, what is it? What's your evenings like? What do you get up to?
Well, I'm a family man. I've got a wife and two kids, which keep me going. My son, he's 12. My daughter's 15. Um, I like kind of watching stuff on Netflix and different things. I love football. I'm a season ticket holder at Celtic Football Club. I love that. Love going along to games with my son. Um, it's funny. I know an old Celtic legend, Tommy Burns. He said his three passions in life are family, faith, and football. And I would be the same. That would be the three things that sort of keep me going. Um, yeah.
No, fair enough. Well, as you go through life, obviously you're in prison. You're working with these guys, these girls. I guess is it just men you're working with, or is it a
Men
mix?
and women, yeah. Mhm.
You come out of prison, you're walking down the road. Do you have in your mind thinking, do you know what? I suppose, but by the grace of God, go I. Is that a
Oh,
regular
absolutely.
thing as you come out?
Absolutely. Yeah. Most mornings when I pick up keys, I have that thought. You know what I mean? I could be down in the halls 20, 25 years ago and a chaplain coming to see me.
Mhm.
You know, and I think it does blow my mind what God has done in my life and the opportunities that I have and the role that I'm in now. Full-time ministry as a prison chaplain. It's incredible. And that was never on my radar. When I was a volunteer for Prison Fellowship all those years ago, I never ever thought I'll be a chaplain, a prison chaplain one day. But the opportunity came, and I took it. But yeah, no, it is. It's incredible when I think of where I was more than 20 years ago to where I am now. Not just even in prison chaplaincy, but my family and community and different things. It's, I was ordained as an Assemblies of God minister in 2018, which is mad in itself. I did nothing at school. I wasn't interested in school, couldn't be bothered. Just wanted to jump about with my pals and have a laugh. And then kind of 2016, I think it was 15, 16, started kind of studying and all that sort of stuff, getting my credentials, and realized that I wasn't as thick as I thought I was. Because at school I just wasn't interested. I never applied myself. My report card always said the same thing. Paul is easily distracted. Paul is a distraction. That sort of stuff. The kind of classic bad kid stuff and report cards. So yeah, it's quite incredible.
Just coming back to your mum and dad, you come out of hospital, you're making this decision. Obviously, you're still an addict. You've not been to Wales. You've not dealt with that part of your life. But I can really see your dad with his paper, pulling the paper down, putting it back up again. How did that relationship go? Because obviously you then went off, you changed, you went to Wales, and you stopped being an addict. What was the relationship with your folks after that?
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I remember I'd been down in Wales for maybe 2 or 3 months, and I ran home. I ran home kind of twice a week, and I ran home one Saturday night, and I really want to apologise for all the chaos, all the carnage the previous sort of 10 years. My mum had never ever given up on me. Phenomenal, really. Um, and I ran home to apologise. My dad answered the phone. And I said, Dad, I'm just going. I want to apologise. Oh, I'll get your mum. I'll get your mum. Classic kind of dad stuff. Oh, don't do feelings. Don't do feelings. My mum, she came on the phone and I apologised and explained a bit about why I was apologising. And she says, Paul, if you really are sorry, me and your dad, we had a good life. The past 10 years haven't been great, but we're glad that you're doing well now. Said, but if you really are sorry, you'll never ever touch another drug. Show us you're sorry. And my relationship with my mum and dad has been fantastic. Over all the years, they came down to Wales to see me and different things, and I know it's brilliant, total restoration.
I still I love the fact that initial question when you're in the hospital, there's two guys from the cafe next to you and saying, "Have you had enough yet?" Because that question is so it's so simple and yet so profound, deep, so life transformative, clearly for you and I guess for others, because they are clearly wanting to help you, but also do you want to? It's
Are you willing yet?
Oh yeah.
I know, absolutely. And it was a massive turning point for me. Like I lay in a hospital bed, they left. So the ambulance rushed me through to Aberdeen Hospital, which is 35, 40 miles from Fraserburgh. The ambulance rushed me through, and kind of the doctor told me that, another 5, 10 minutes, I think I would have been away, would have been gone. The volume of drugs that were in my system was just mad. Um, but I lay in the hospital bed, like I say, and reflected on that question. What have I had enough of? And an overwhelming sense of loneliness, and thinking, if this is all that life has to offer me, I need to try this faith thing. I need to change. I've got to be serious about it. I've got to embrace it, because this is where change will happen. Yeah.
Thank you. Really enjoying this. Just the story of your life, really, of going from not great to quite transformative, and now you're working with men and women in prisons and coming from a perspective of actually understanding some of the stuff they've been through. You know what it's like to be on drugs, which means you can empathize with them in a whole different way.
Well, they say, don't they? I mean, I'm not a counsellor, but they say the best counsellors have been through suffering.
Yeah.
For me, if I had never been an addict and I'm sat down with somebody that's struggling with addiction, and I say, listen, I know what you're going through, that's patronising. Down in Low Moss, we're on a recovery group with the guys, and just guys you're able to identify with guys, what they're going through and different things, offer advice, and if somebody's had experience in something that you're struggling with, like I believe nothing is wasted with God. Every sort of experience, negative or positive, that we have been through, God will use for good. It's the verse, is it? The classic verse, Romans 8, but yet all things work together for good for those who love Christ Jesus. And I believe that nothing is wasted. we're able to use our negative experiences. In the verse, I think it's in 2 Corinthians 4, God comforts us in our sorrow that we might be a comfort to others. So we are comforted to be a comfort, blessed to be a blessing. And to be able to share your experiences with people. What I've found is a prison chaplain in sort of 15, 20 years a full-time ministry, people are more attracted to our vulnerabilities than they are our strengths.
Mm.
People often feel threatened by our strengths. People, addicts in the town here would say to me, but it's okay for you. But this is the version of me 21 years on. It's been a journey for me to get to where I'm at.
Mm.
And, it's there for everybody. I always say there's nothing special about me. I had a little bit of willingness and was willing to allow God to change my life and take me on a journey.
I love that. A little bit of willingness, because it does. It requires. We don't have to have it all. We haven't got to have all the answers. We just have to want to try and take the first step, and the next step will come. And take it one at a time. I'm wrap this up here. I'm just really grateful for your conversation. Really, I think there's a lot of encouragement in there. Whatever you might be struggling with in life, whether it is somebody who's addicted to heroin in your family, or somebody who's just can't get a job and it's just getting more and more depressed and they're becoming more and more insular or vulnerable. You just need to reach out to people, really, and just say, are you done? Are you done with that part of your life? Can I show you a better way? And so important, which is the other bit you said, when someone asks you a question, wait for the answer and listen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. People want to talk. It's that thing, is it? You ask somebody how they're doing, and they say fine. But then I know there have been people in my life that I've been accountable to, pastors and different things, while I've been challenged. And they've asked me how I am, and I've said fine. Then they've leaned in a wee bit and said, but are you really?
Yeah.
And you think, oh, no, I'm falling apart. And I guess it's finding people that you can be totally honest and kind of transparent with. It's no good to get vulnerable with absolutely everybody asks you how you're doing. Finding those people that'll cheer you on, that'll believe in you, that'll pray for you when the chips are down.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm going to let you get on with your day. We're going to go to some more music. We'll get this video up on YouTube podcast in a week or so. But thanks ever so much. Have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thanks very much, Andy.